All right, as March Madness slowly but surely winds down, we're going to really, we promise, start gearing up for the NBA as we're slowly but surely winding down the NBA regular season. We're now at a point where we want to discuss a little bit further the contender pretender conversation we had a few weeks ago. We're going to start over in the Eastern Conference, and we'll stick with the top six in both conferences. Right now, you have the Heat, the 76ers, the Bucks, the Celtics, the Bulls, and the Raptors. Drink, where do you, as far as from a contender, pretender, or however you want to lay it out, what do you make of all those six teams? Who's a real contender and who is not?
All right, so Miami is a contender. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Eric Spoelstra. Yes, I know we seen what we seen in the past with the team fighting or whatever. They'll get over that. That's Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler do that from time to time. But they'll be fine. I think Miami is definitely a contender. Philadelphia 76ers, definitely a contender. I think it just hinders more on what version of James Harden they're going to get as the playoffs approach and as we get into the playoffs. But I think right now they're a contender. Until I see something that tells me they're not, I do think they're a contender. Milwaukee Bucks, come on, man. They just got Brook Lopez back. They seem to be getting in the form of some such. And we know what they can do. We've seen what they can do, what they did last year. So they're a contender. As long as they got Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday, they seem like they're going to be in a good position with those role players. Now, the next three teams, I don't think any one of these three teams are contenders right now. I'm sorry. Boston Celtics, sorry, exciting. I got it. But the problem with them is twofold for me. Problem number one, they don't have a true leader on that team. And if they do have a true leader, it's not one of their better players. Not saying it has to be, but it does make the game easier when you have a younger team like they do, when your best player is also your leader. I think Marcus Smart is probably more of the leader on that team, but we know the best players are Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So, and then the coach is relatively new to all this like success. He hasn't really done anything that make me think that he can get them over the hump as far as a contender. So I got them as a pretender. The Chicago Bulls, thanks but no thanks. Here's the deal. With the Chicago Bulls, your best three players are players with zero. Two of your best three players have zero playoff success. DeMar DeRozan does have playoff success, but it doesn't amount to a ring of any sort. And then you got a first year, I'm not saying like, building down, this is first year coaching, but I'm saying this is his first year with Chicago. It usually take a year or two to kind of gel and get things right.
He coached Chicago last year, right?
Did he?
Oh, I'm pretty sure he did.
They were so awful. Okay, my bad. But even in the second year, I think him taking up, because like they was awful last year. Like, let's call it what it is. They was awful. And then, so I forgot he coached there. My bad about that, but he should blame the output from last year. But so if they make it to the playoffs this year, what my problem is, I don't know. I mean, maybe DeRozan is the guy, but is it Zach LaVine? Is it Vucevic? It's like, I don't know if I've seen enough out of this team that make me think they can be a contender. Could they win a series? Yes. Could they get to a game 7 in a series? Yes, but being a contender, I just don't think so. And the Toronto Raptors, to wrap them up, no, they're not a contender. They're playing good. They got NBA champion caliber players on their team still. When you're talking about Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, those are championship level players. Not knocking that, but have you watched the Raptors this year and just thought, man, they watch out for those Raps? You don't want to play them in the first round. I don't know. I haven't seen that. And listen, they start out the first half of the season flopping around over there, drinking them some of that Canadian pineapple juice, and then they finally woke up and started playing some ball. And they are looking impressive right now, but just not impressive enough to win the title. So. Yeah, Jay. That's my prediction for the contenders and pretenders of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I think pretty much agree with you. The only one I disagree is Boston, and I'm not sold on Boston. I just have Boston on kind of the fringe. Like I'm really intrigued, and they're playing great, but I don't have them. I certainly don't have them up there with Milwaukee and Philadelphia, and I do think Miami. Even though the standings have really tightened up, if you look at these conference standings right now, you got those top 4 teams separated by maybe just one game, really jumbled up. So we'll see how it goes as far as playoff seeding. Who gets the top seed? Who gets the 4th? Does anyone want the top seed? You might have to play Brooklyn. So you have all that going on. But I think the best teams, from my point of view, are Philadelphia and Milwaukee. Don't want to bet against the champs. Don't want to bet against Giannis. We know, my philosophy on the Bucks. It's about Middleton and Drew Holiday. It's just do you get the consistency from the backcourt to supplement the great play that we figure Giannis is going to give them night in, night out. Philadelphia, in my opinion, the best big man in basketball in Joel Embiid. No disrespect to the Joker. He's great too. But listen, Embiid and James Harden, that pick and roll. We saw Harden disappear against, who was it? Was it against Brooklyn?
Yeah.
We saw that. But I think for the most part, he's been doing what he needs to do. I don't think he's quite the scorer he was in his Houston Rockets days. But as a facilitator, I think he's continued to get better in that regard. And it's something to see his career, how it's progressed from his early days as a 6th man to being the guy that just couldn't quite get it done. And now he's the number 2 guy, clearly. And what him and Embiid doing a 2-man game, something special. Can you get more? What about Tyrese Maxey? We'll see him on the big stage in a big role now. What about Tobias Harris? Could you just be the number 4 man with a max contract? Is that too much to ask? You have all that. So I think those are the best 2 teams, no doubt. And both coaches have championships. We know about Mike Budenholzer last year, and Doc Rivers won one 15 years ago or something, but it still counts. Listen, look, Miami's they've been struggling a little bit lately, but this is still a team led by one of the best leaders in the game, and Jimmy Butler, and he just does it all for that team. Bam Adebayo, the defensive anchor. Tyler Hero, the 6th man. Duncan Robinson out here just knocking down all the threes. And the list goes on and on. I think they still have the ingredients to contend and make it out of the East. But I think Milwaukee and Philadelphia are a little better at this point.
I just want to point out, Eric Spoelstra is also an NBA championship coach.
He is. Eric Spoelstra. That's true. Absolutely. Now the Boston, I talk about them on the fringe, and I just, I'm not a believer in Boston for kind of similar to what you have, and I think my problem continues to be, does that team, when the chips are down, do they have it figured out to where Jason Tatum is the guy? Because I like Jaylen Brown, and I think he's a heck of a ball player. But I think Jason Tatum's the guy. But my thing is, does Jaylen Brown know Jason Tatum's the guy? That's my question. Is it going to be one of them things to where it's almost kind of a Westbrook KD thing? KD, to me, clearly, I think he's just a little bit better, and he's got the physical gift of the wingspan. He's gonna be able to do more, creating his own shot, and it's gonna be more difficult to challenge him. But does Boston know that internally? Can Marcus Smart get those 2 guys together and say, "Hey, Jaylen, I love you, but it's gonna be Jason. He's 1A, you're 1B." I think that and I don't know. And you go back to early on in the season, and that's another thing. Like it's pretty impressive, and I think the young coach Uday probably deserves credit for this. The team was in disarray They weren't winning. You was hearing reports about like, oh, they only care about themselves, blah blah. They not team guys. So I do think it's impressive what they've done. But when you look at them and you compare them against Milwaukee and Philadelphia, I think they could beat Miami perhaps, but I just don't see them up against. I don't think they stack up too well against Milwaukee and Philadelphia. The other teams, look, Chicago. Look, man, I understand. When you remove Michael Jordan from your franchise history, you've basically done next to nothing. So I get it. People want us to come out here and, the Bulls are back. We doing things, baby. Yeah, we get it. Yeah, you're doing something all right. You had a real cute start to the season. You thought you was going to be a number 1 seed. Then you thought you was going to be a 2 seed. Then a 3 seed. They over here sinking. They're sinking. They're tied with Toronto. And you said it, Toronto, we couldn't find them. We needed an anchor to reach down to those guys. They were so low down the standing. And now they're tied. And, and I get it. Chicago is very talented. They've look, I think what DeRozan's done this season has been outstanding. But look, you hit the nail on the head, and this is something that we've been talking about. You don't trust none of those guys come playoff time. That's my position. We haven't seen Levine in these moments. We haven't seen Vucevic in these moments out of the first round because he ain't went nowhere. And LeBron's in the Western Conference, but are you taking DeRozan over Joel Embiid and Giannis and Jimmy Butler? No, I would say no. And then Toronto, I don't even know what they're doing here. I mean, that's a classic thing of like Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse must be doing a great job. I think that's impressive to get those guys all the way up to the 6th seed. But I get it. Look, those guys, they got some guys who, were on Kawhi Leonard's back for the ring. I understand. That's great. But man, I forgot about Kyle Lowry. I didn't even mention Kyle Lowry when I talked about Miami. I knew there was somebody I was forgetting. But anyway, no, I don't see Toronto. That sounds like a great regular season story. It really does. But I'm gonna tell you, we sticking with the top 6, but I do have to say, look, Brooklyn, yeah. Brooklyn is really, if everybody's out there for Brooklyn, Brooklyn, I think, is definitively better than every team except Philly and Milwaukee.
I ain't mad at that. I ain't mad at that at all. And before we get over to the Western Conference, I just want to say this before I say the teams. I think this year, is it reasonable to say the East is a better conference than the West? Like, do the West still have this stronghold on the league where they're just so much better than the East? Because I don't know, man.
I think it feels even. It feels even at minimum, and I think I would give the East a little up an edge. The one thing I would say about the East, I find the East way more interesting. I think that's one thing I will say. I think the storylines from the East, and when you look at Milwaukee, when you look at Philly, Miami, Boston, even Chicago, because everyone's just pushing Chicago on me. And I'm like, will you stop? Like, we're going to see in the playoffs. Like, you said it, they might win a series, but Brooklyn too. I mean, Brooklyn's incredibly interesting. And even Cleveland's being decimated by injuries, but even Cleveland is something to behold this season.
Right. So with that said, moving on to the Western Conference, we got the Phoenix Suns, Memphis Grizzlies, Golden State Warriors, Dallas Mavericks, Utah Jazz, and the Denver Nuggets. What say you, Jay?
Well, I say for the Eastern Conference, it's seemingly like, you go from the top to the bottom and it kind of like, okay, contender. Okay, now it's questionable. And now it's like, no. The West, to me, I see it a little bit differently. I think Phoenix has been so dominant in the regular season, and just based off what they did in the playoffs last year, I think you'd be a fool to discount them at this point. So yeah, Phoenix deserves it. Memphis, God, as good as Memphis has been, and they've been great to the point where I don't know if they can even see Golden State in the rearview mirror for the number 2 seed. And I just think, even though they're the 2 seed and they deserve our respect. When I look at them and I'm thinking playoffs and I'm thinking about 7 games and I'm thinking about, when a team has an opportunity, just look at them for 7 games. Can they find more ways to score when inevitably teams just stack up on John Morant. You know, when that happens, can the Jaren Jacksons and the Desmond Bains, can those guys carry the load? And when you talk about contenders, and when I'm talking about contenders in the sense, can they win? Can they win it all, or can they, you know, come out of their own conference at the very least? And I don't see it. I don't see it. And they're incredibly exciting. John Morant's the most exciting young player in the league, I think. But I don't think they have enough offensively. You know, unless John Morant can just, you know, unless John Morant just handles all the pressure he receives and just distributes so well and guys knock down open shots for him. I think that's the question for me. Golden State, I know Golden State's been getting on my nerves the second half of the season. Every time Golden State's on the national TV schedule, nobody's playing. I'm so tired of these Moses Moody's and Damian Lees and you know, I like Kuminga, but you know, he's not Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry, for God's sake. You know, so look, Golden State is a contender, but they got to get on the floor. And I know Draymond's been hurt. Clay's in there, but he's easing back in there. And we've seen glimpses, but now Steph with a rolled ankle, and it's just, you know, Golden State's a contender, but it's all predicated on health. If they roll into the playoffs with their guys on the floor, they will have the best. They will have the only other team you'd even put in the same stratosphere as them is Phoenix. So that's what it's predicated on. Dallas and Utah, you know, Dallas is the same way they've been for the past few years, I think. Luka Doncic is great, but could we please get a number 2 out here? Could we please? I'm not seeing it. They couldn't find Porzingis consistently. Maybe they'll do something in Washington, D.C. with him. But no, I mean, I can't get behind Dallas from a contender standpoint. You got to have more than one dude. And Utah, look, we did Utah and Brooklyn. Was it last week? Maybe it was a week before. No. Rudy Gobert is your number 2 option. A guy,
nope.
You know, pick and rolls and offensive rebounds and no post game. So no. And then, you know, look, Denver with the Joker. And Denver's on the fringe, but the reason I would say I believe in them is because, but it's all, in the end, it's all about Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. It's all about health. If those guys play, they're very dangerous. And they're not Brooklyn dangerous, but that's the same, like Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray. It's not Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons. And by the way, when I say Kyrie Irving, I'm talking about when he couldn't play because of the New York City rules on your medical decisions. So it's not quite the same thing, but those guys still mean an incredibly lot to that team, particularly when you talk about Jamal Murray and Jokic playing that dynamic duo that it is. So I think, look, Denver's on the fringe to me, but I take it more seriously than Utah and Dallas.
Yeah, I wish we would have did the Western Conference first. It would have been quick. Listen, the only contender on this list right now, as it stands right now, is the Phoenix Suns. I'm sorry. I agree with you. Like, Memphis is too young. I don't know what I'm gonna get out of Memphis. So if I gotta sit here and think about what I'm gonna get out of a player in the playoffs, they're not contenders. I'm sorry. Warriors, the problem with them is they're getting older and they're getting hurt more. And the problem is your best player is Steph Curry. Steph Curry got a history of getting hurt in the playoffs. Then he's going to come back off an injury. Okay, cool. Your second best player is Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson missed 2 full seasons. He's still trying to get into the rhythm of the game, right? Oh, by the way, your third player that missed a good, let's say 65% of the season with his own injury. And he's your best defensive player on the top of it. And he's your best playmaker. So the problem with the Warriors is I don't know if it's just the attrition rate is just catching up with them now, and they you know what they remind me of, to be honest with you, the Brooklyn Nets last year. Well, you had 3 stars, and this team on paper, oh man, it's a knee slapper. They so good, but they never could stay healthy enough to actually accomplish the mission. That's how I'm looking at the Warriors. So right now, they're a pretender. I just don't know if they can get healthy enough. You know what I'm saying? I would have to see all three of them playing before the playoffs start for me to really be like, oh, yeah, they're a contender. And right now, I don't think we're going to see that. Hey, what you said about Dallas is the truth with the gravy on it. It's just been a Luka. Listen, I think the second best player for the Mavericks is Mark Cuban at this point because these other players are out here just, hey, Luka, here you go, buddy. And they just don't want to be out there. I'm just messing around, but I do like what they get out of Spencer Dinwiddie, but they got him in a trade. He wasn't like organic. So it's like, that's who they probably gonna have to depend on because I can't tell you the last time Tim Hardaway did anything that impressed me. And what we about to depend on Max Cleaver or whatever. Like I don't know, man. I'm out on the Mavericks.
No, we're not. No. That's on 42, baby. 42.
Utah Jazz, like you said, you know how I feel about Rudy Gobert. Rudy, like. Everybody want to tell me about Rudy Gobert. He could barely do anything on offense, and he can only play other centers, and he's not even like shutting them down. Like you're not gonna put. Let's say the Jazz played the Mavericks in the first round. Rudy Gobert ain't stopping Luka Doncic. You kidding me right now? You better knock it off. So it's like your second best player has a reputation of being one of the best players in the league, but when you actually watch them, they could be, hit or miss. So I'm even with what's his name, Bogdanović, even if he came back and played lights out, I just don't think him and Donovan Mitchell is enough. I just not in a 7-game series. And I can get Rudy Gobert out of here. I can get him in foul trouble quick and get him out of here. Now what? So out on Utah and Denver, I hear what you're saying. But the same thing, like I said, with Golden State, unless Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. was back playing before the season was over, and then they could take that first series to kind of work their way back in as far as the scheme and how they want to play, I would say that. But right now, it's Jokic and Aaron Gordon. I mean, isn't Denver the team with the guy Bones Highland? Maybe, I think they're the one. Like, maybe he might get something done, but I don't know. I'm sorry, Jay, but the only contender I see right now coming out the Western Conference is the Phoenix Suns right now. I think it's their conference to lose at this point.